Assalamu alaikum. We are now on part number 18 of Dr. Ajam's thesis on origin of the Islam-based schools in Cape Town and the struggles of Muslim education 1860 to 1980 and the role of Dr. Abdurrahman. And I edited it, um, uh, the doctoral thesis, from 500 pages to about 90 odd pages. So we nearly finished, inshallah. It wasn't an advert for Coke. Okay. We're now dealing with the Scottish Kloof Primary School. Okay. I've got a little more lighting here. I'm learning how to make this video. So it's getting there. I've got a background which is different now, etc. So I'm growing. Scottish Kloof Primary School. Woke up with 9 mosques, had the greatest concentration of Muslims in the Cape. But it did not have a Muslim school yet. District 6, Salt River, Claremont, Simonstown, and Paarl already had their own Muslim school. St. Paul's and St. Stephen's Primary School were the only 2 schools that served the city centre area and serving its own denominational children. So they were Christian schools and only dealing with the actual their denomination, and so there wasn't really a primary school for Muslims. Dr. Abdurrahman's surgery was at 99 Loop Street. Now, I was a student at St. Paul's Primary School, by the way. Okay. So Dr. Abdurrahman's surgery was at 99 Loop Street, which is just lower down, close to Burkab. Dr. Abdurrahman was acquainted with the illnesses and high death rate of the impoverished colored communities. An undeveloped land next to Tanabaru, an ancestry Muslim cemetery on the slopes of Signal Hill, was earmarked for the school. Dr. Abdurrahman, as chairman of the Cape Town City Council Streets Committee, knew that this land was going for sale. With his son-in-law, Dr. Abdul Hamid Gul, who served with him on the Rahmania Institute Management Committee, Abdurrahman and some other prominent businessmen formed themselves into the trustees of the Scottish Kloof Institute. On the 25th of March 1924, the deed transfer was signed by the trustees, taking ownership over from William Gavanagh. The trustees were Dr. Abdullah Abdurrahman, Dr. Abdul Hamid Gul, Khan Gul, Muhammad Halim, and Hanif Harris. This 9 Morgan land was bought for £5,020 in cash. Even though all the money was not yet available for the school building, the Scottish Kloof Trust was pressurized to proceed with the building because eligible Muslim parents who were seeking entry for their children into church schools in Burkab were refused. Mr. Khan, you see, there was this kind of prejudice about Muslim schools. They didn't want to educate the Muslims, the Christian schools, the missionary schools. They didn't want to allow Muslims to come to school. So they had this kind of segregation already there between Muslims and Christians, but basically not looking at Muslims. Even though all the money was not yet available for the school building, the Scottish Kloof Trust was pressurized to proceed. Okay, we did that already. Mr. Khan Gul were a resident of Burkab. Pressure was put on the trustees of the Scottish Kloof to proceed with the establishment of the school, even though all the money was not yet available. 2 more rooms were added to the house on the land they bought to effect further improvements, and in this way would seek registration of the school. In 1931, Mr. Ashraf Abdurrahman, a nephew of the doctor, and brother Sonny Abdurrahman, principal of Talfala Institute in Claremont, was appointed principal of Scottish Kloof Primary School at the age of 23 years old. The trustees of Scottish Kloof was not to be administered by publicly elected persons, but rather by the initial subscribers as stipulated by the Constitution of the Trust, notarial agreement 23rd of December 1923, 15 November 55. You see, Professor Ajram consulted like real documentation, original documentation. Scottish Kloof started with a staff of 4, including the principal. The other first teachers were Mr. H. Idros, Miss Gow, and Mrs. Woodman. The following year, the 2 Christian teachers resigned to vacate the post for the 2 young Muslim teachers who had qualified. These qualified teachers and other professionals created the first Cape Muslim middle class. Okay. The notary deed agreement conferred the following management powers onto Dr. Abdurrahman. All management decisions shall be ratified by him before acceptance. The manager shall appoint and dismiss staff, shall receive monies and pay disbursements, and he shall advise Scottish Kloof Institute regarding educational and social matters. The Scottish Kloof trustees were not only concerned with the educational matters of the school, but also with the social condition of the people of Bo-Kaap. Okay, the establishment of Scottish Kloof Primary School gave some relief to the educational accommodation of Muslim school-going children and employment of some of the newly qualified Muslim teachers. The school had a major problem. Its feeder area, the Bo-Kaap, was at that time an economically depressed area. The mortality rate was high, often from pulmonary tuberculosis, a poverty-related disease often found in squalid, insanitary, overcrowded conditions. Often 2 to 3 families in one room. Bishop Lewis, St. Monica's Maternity Home chairman, Bishop Lewis, now we know where Bishop Lewis' name comes from. He was St. Monica's Maternity Home chairman. Social progress among colored people. A report. No, this is Bishop Lewis, yeah. St. Monica's Maternity Home chairman. A social progress amongst colored people, a report of proceedings, Colored European Conference, 1933, page 48. So that is basically the short of Scottish Kloof Primary School establishment, and now we come to the Scottish Kloof Flats, okay, which is still existent. Dr. Abdurrahman, as member of the Cape Town City Council, serving on an ad hoc statutory body since 1927, put pressure on council to undertake a large housing scheme to reduce the incidence of poverty-related diseases such as TB. He argued that housing of this nature would benefit the economy, education, and that the housing scheme would get political support from the colored masses. Now, one must realize that social engineering and making sure that the masses do not basically is not able to take up positions until go to university and study and succeed with the higher standardized education is part of the political. The part of the political feature is that not to give people housing, not to give the masses housing. That will ensure disease, crime, drug addiction, disorientation of societies, etc., and inability to actually pass the exams into the homework of a conventional school. That is a very clear kind of strategy of colonialists. Dr. Abdurrahman held that children from these poverty-stricken conditions, riddled by illness and squalor, have little chance of benefiting from schooling. There you go. The urgency of large-scale housing was high on the agenda after the establishment of the small Scottish Kloof School, which was already growing. The council's medical officer declared the densely populated area in Bo-Kaap a slum in terms of the Slums Act in 1934. That's another strategy. They don't provide the necessary requirements. They don't look after the people. Then they slum the area and then they take the property. That's basically how the council works. The houses were to be demolished, and the city engineer proposed that the large land owned by the Scottish Club Institution. Now, this is a very sad situation here. Let me read further. It will come out. It will come out. The management of the institute owned by the Scottish Club Institution be bought to erect large-scale housing for the displaced people. The management of the institute refused to part with the school's land. The Slums Act in 1934 made provision for the local authority to expropriate the land as deemed suitable for a housing scheme. Permission was then sought from the Minister of Health to alienate the land owned by the Scottish Club Institute. You see how they steal it through organizations, through organized positions and policies. I should have taken another mug because it says things go better with Coke. No, I'm not advertising Coke. Things go better with connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the reality of it. But we can't make a cup like that. Okay. And let's see now. The council medical officer declared the densely population. Okay. Abdurrahman presented the case. Now here, the Minister of Health alienated the land owned by the Scottish Club Institution. In other words, they stole the land from the people, from the Muslims. Dr. Abdurrahman presented the case of the institute in the City Hall on the 4th of November 1938, 2 years after the council chose to compel the institute to release the land. So many of the legal laws that is in the statutes of a government is there to protect the elite. I studied law at UWC, but my first intention was to do a BCom LLB. But because I studied law, I did private law, etc. It was terrible because you had to learn about the apartheid laws, and I couldn't really stomach that kind of law degree. But I did learn something from it. Okay. Not from the apartheid laws, from law itself, from private law. I did learn something. For instance, one of the things in private law says that if you come into an area and there was an existing practice and you bought into that area, you cannot in actual fact complain about it because you knew about it before you bought into the area. Such as the adhan. People are complaining about the adhan, but they cannot complain because they bought the property. The adhan has been existent long ago. So in private law, really, you cannot complain after you come into an area because you knew it existed, so you can't complain. You bought into the area. And many of the people don't know that private law does not allow you to complain against something that already existed in the area that you bought. You bought it with an open eye, and therefore you can't complain. That's one thing I learned from private law. And I also learned from private law that if your tree, in actual fact, goes into the other property of the other person, he has the right to cut off the part that is by it. It belongs to him, actually. So I've got a lemon tree in my yard, and all the lemons on that side, I told my neighbor, that's yours. You can pick whatever you want to. You can cut it off if you want to. It doesn't belong to me. The moment your tree goes over to the other side, it belongs to it goes past the boundary, and therefore it becomes the property of the other person. Okay. The Abdurrahman presented this case in the City Hall 2 years after the council chose to compel the institute to release the land. It's like another way after they stole the land. Okay. The meeting concluded with the following: Abdurrahman's remarkable coup. It's quoted as Abdurrahman's remarkable coup. The council would have to pay £8,000 in cash and provide in another part of the proposed housing scheme, or 1 acre of land and building thereon a school for Muslim children. Because the Christian schools gave preference to their denominational families, Dr. Abdurrahman succeeded in getting the municipality, which was not according to the Act of the Union and the Constitution in 1910, concerned with schools, But he got them to provide land and construct a suitable building for the Muslim children out of their particular revenue. The council's construction of an Islam-oriented school constituted a statement of religious tolerance. Okay, if you look at it from that side. And the Muslim community as part of the cultural mosaic of the mother city. Yeah, the law also has this kind of precedent system that I also learned from private law, okay, and from the law lectures I attended at UWC. That we have a precedent system. If a judge in actual fact made a ruling, that ruling stands. That ruling stands. It can be referred to previously by lawyers in order to get whatever they need out of a deal. Until in such time that particular law is successfully, rebutted in terms of maybe a lack of something, then the law gets changed. But furthermore, the precedent law means that whatever was before stays. Whatever a judge has in actual fact stated, and it's recorded as a law, stays, and you can refer to that as a reference to make your case. Okay. So we're now on page 962. Better than what they, okay. Here the grandchildren are coming. Oh my goodness. Okay. The school's construction of an Islam-oriented school was a statement of religious tolerance of the Muslim community. I mean, there's a precedent as part of the cultural mosaic of the mother city. Bukab was assured an Islam-oriented school and a residential place, the Scottish Kloof Flats, better than what they were used to. It was assumed that the school building would also arise simultaneously with the garden village for the Malay Community Court, as the town clerk had earlier advised the trustees. Dr. Abdurrahman passed away in 1940 before the completion of the Scottish Kloof Flats. May Allah guide the Jannah, inshallah. His daughter Sishikul succeeded by her father as a councillor and also as a trustee of the Scottish Kloof Institution. 14 years after the above agreement in 1952, there's a singer coming in 1952. The building was completed and handed over to the trustees of Scottish Kloof Institute by the town clerk. The council failed to provide 400 dwellings as promised and only completed 198 units. The outbreak of World War II prevented the further development despite of the fact that the foundation was, and even up till today, that foundation was basically just a little bit. I'm busy with hard work. I love it. Thank you very much. Yes. In a letter to the town clerk. Okay, come greet the people. This is Assalamu alaikum. This is the other one. They are twins. I'll have to. Okay, I see. It's okay. Look here, I'm gonna have to introduce you. These are my twins. Our grandchildren. These are twins. Lift up here. Let me see. You can't see you all yet. Okay, there you are. And so now I have to stop because they arrived home. Thank you very much. Finish off with part 18. May Allah protect them, inshallah, all of us, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.